Jude,
Good afternoon.
welcome to the Talking Talent podcast, my good friend.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you. How have you been?
Been very good. Enjoying some nice weather in Dublin. We don't always get it that way, as you well know. So we're extra happy to have some sunshine and see some blue skies.
Nice weather in Dublin. Damn. Now I've really got you on a good day, so this is going to be good.
We've had a few of these days late. It's all good.
So tell me what you're working on, or what's your focus on at the moment.
So my main focus at the moment is what I loosely term performance coaching. And I say loosely because I'm coaching a variety of people, different age groups, different scenarios, some in the sporting world, some in the business world, and just some people in the teaching world. And some of it is maybe a little bit more like mentoring. Some of it could possibly overlap with life coaching. So I just bundle it all and say it's performance coaching. Yeah,
I really like that term actually, because I think the phrase life coaching has sort of been watered down so much over the years, and I think it's a great phrase, but it's just there's been so many people saying they've been life coaches. So to say that you're a performance coach means that you're actually helping people get very specific results, and I know from you, you're using a wide variety of tools to do that, depending on the individual person.
Yes, well, my experiences in life have opened me up to various different ways of looking at things, and then different ways of approaching, dealing with, and improving. But I think a lot of it comes down to the best way of enhancing performance for me is through enriching life and enriching quality of life.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Say someone comes to you and they've been sort of drifting through life. Maybe they've been successful comparatively or not, or maybe they've been successful like financially, but they have sort of suffered in other areas of their life. Someone comes to you and they want to be more, or they want to be better. What's the one thing that you can do or that you would advise a person from an overall perspective that they could do to sort of get themselves to moving towards the place that they want to be, whatever that is, or however they deem that to be success?
Well, firstly, before advising in any way, I prefer to kind of think that I enable or create space for them. I'd want to get to know the person a little bit more, understand them, where they're coming from, because many people say that they want certain things, but it may not actually be really what they want. So getting to know the person first and understanding them, building up a little bit of rapport with them, going through then some of my thinking, which, as I said, about enriching life and what that involves. And then also in terms of people that I've spent time with that have been extremely successful in outward as well as in other ways in life. I bring things down. I use the acronym APPS. So we're using an app today. It's easy for people to remember, but APPS for me representing attitude, closely linked to awareness or by awareness, perspective, preparation, and that leading to success. So to get back to your question more directly, if somebody comes to me and they say they want to achieve certain things, well, I want to know why, and do they really want to achieve what they're saying they want to achieve, and how is that important to them? And once we can establish that, then it makes it a lot easier to start putting things in place to moving towards that.
Yeah, because you have worked with some of the most famous sports people in the world, and at the same time, the tools that you have worked with various golfers and others across other sports has been able to sort of been cross-transfer into people who want to do well in business, as you say, or in teaching or whatever.
Correct.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Let you finish the question as you wanted to ask.
No, it wasn't a question. I was actually just leading to that. I was glad you jumped in. Go ahead.
Yes, so I spend a lot of time with top-level professional golfers, and like up at in the top few in the world, spending time with them, working with them, and also looking at what the others around them were doing, the teams that they had, the teams of others, and what was being used to help them to perform at their best. And that is very much overlaps very easily into the business world. Now, the sports people can learn from business people, and the business people can learn from sports people and see what's been done well in the different fields. But I think golf in particular is probably one of the closest to executive lifestyle and the business world.
And why is that?
It's not a reactionary sport. Well, it's not a reactionary sport. It's not a ball coming at you at speed that you've got to just react to. You have to initiate the process. There's a lot of thinking time. There's quite a bit of preparation time. Now, preparation time is the same for maybe many or all sports, but the thinking time while in action is quite different to most sports. As I say, if you're driving a Formula One car, yes, I'm sure there is still a fair amount of thinking going on as well. At the same time, if you're on the field playing soccer, football, rugby, a lot of it is more about reaction. Now, not totally so. There are overlaps, but with golf, the ball is there on the tee. You've got to initiate the process, and in a round of golf, which may take for a tournament, could be anywhere from 4.5 to 6 hours. There's really only of actual playing time, hitting the ball, maybe 5 minutes.
Wow, that's true, actually.
So it's pre-shot, after shot, and if I'm talking to golfers, I like to think that most shots are predetermined. And when I say predetermined by the state that the golfer enters into taking the shot.
Yeah. Because I remember that I was either talking with you, I was in a conversation with you a few years ago, and as I was talking with you, a top level golfer sent you a text message, and he sent you something that was a bit jokey and a bit quirky, and you says he's going to win this US Open, because you says whenever he gets into this level of flow or sort of easiness with himself, yes, he's usually quite hard to stop. And I thought that's a really interesting insight, but I didn't really put the value on it until a week later when I seen photographs of him on front page around the world with his trophy and his whatever multi-million-dollar check. And I thought, wow, man, you're one of those guys who can really get a feel for people, and you're someone who can tune in and sort of decipher what the person's real problem is, or where they're going. And as you say, when people come to you looking for success in field A, you've got an ability to be able to go, actually, they think that they want A, but it's really B that they want, and B will probably get them both A and B.
Our A may be just totally irrelevant at the end of the day once they've achieved B. So I think the golfer you're talking about may well be relevant to the country that you're in. And I do remember that I used to advise my father, who would like to bet on golf. I would advise him based on replies that I may get to a message sent out to one or more golfers. And yeah, that can give some indication as to what sort of state they're in, and if they're in a good state. It's not totally up to them, because there are other competitors in the field and various different elements or variables at play all the time. Yet the crucial one for me is the state of that player.
Yeah, of course. And so is there, and I've asked this to someone else recently, actually, and it was the question, do you see something when you're around these top level executives and these high level sports professionals, is there one thing that these people have in common that other people can replicate or learn or develop?
Is there something they have in common? Quite often I would say their energy, their presence, their energy. And can people replicate that? It's not quite as easy as reading a book and suddenly developing that level of energy, because there are a huge number of ingredients that can go into it. Some of them will have come through birth, through the environment that they've grown up in, their parents' attitude, and what they've seen in early years can be extremely important, and how they view life. And that's something that can certainly be worked on, how people view and interpret life, because your enjoyment or your whole, how you see everything in life is through your perception of your thoughts as they are filtered through your beliefs.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. I was brought up with a very specific set of beliefs as a white Irish Catholic in an environment where I've only ever met white Irish Catholics for maybe 16 or 17 years of my life. I had a very narrow view of the world. And as you know, I've since basically been around the world numerous times to basically put myself in a position where I never meet white Irish Catholics anymore. And with that has come, and I've always said this, my traveling is my true education. Despite the fact that I've graduated and been conferred 7 times, the word education actually comes from a Latin word, educat, which means to flower, to open the mind. And yes. I believe that one of the things that has helped me to basically change my beliefs without sort of doing any type of study or anything is just by traveling the world, meeting people and being open to their story, trying to see the human being for who they are and not judging them or judging their story or their past. They've come across my path for a reason, and I'm going to accept them for the person they are at this time and the reason they have been placed in front of my life. That's how I see it. And I think that's why, even though I haven't stopped being a white Irish Catholic, I don't have I would have a lot of the opposite views now that I would have had growing up. And that's why I'm never too pushed when it comes to forcing my opinion on anyone, because there were so many things that I was so opinionated about and so strong about, even last year and the year before, that now I realize that doesn't resonate with me anymore. So I'm always thinking the current stuff that I believe may not resonate with me too far in the future either. So I'm not going to be too forced and getting it down other people's throat at the moment.
Well, that's a wonderful open way of looking at things, and just something that came to mind as you were describing and where you came from and the early years. I believe everyone has seeds within them, but they don't always get watered or nurtured to develop into something. And you had a seed and somebody watered that seed with you, and it developed into a change in thinking from many others who didn't get that same watering of that seed, and you decided that there was more than just the town that you grew up in, and you wanted to go and see and explore that.
Yeah, it's a good analogy actually. Yeah, that other type of nourishment that you can get from stepping outside your sort of your habitation that you were sort of planted in originally. Yeah,
and it's like in the current environment when we're in the middle of this pandemic. Well, a lot of people don't realize 7 to 8% of their bodies are made up of viruses. Viruses were here on the planet a long time before us. Everybody has viruses within them. Yet everybody is scared and concerned about this one. And I'm not going to get into talking about this particular virus, but it's something that is there. There is potential within people to for this virus or other viruses to be developed into something more, or there's potential for it not to be.
Yeah, I know that you're not so much a man who gets caught up in the small details of the latest mainstream sort of media induced news, and I'm not either. But around the subject of virus, I know that you're widely read and educated across a wide variety of fields. And for me, you've got a real holistic education based on many reasons. But without getting into this current virus, could you maybe give us some of your insights or understanding of the region alone, like the area of health in general, or whatever you sort of can contribute to sort of put people's mind at ease around the world?
Well, health and life, and actually something that I was explaining to somebody recently, that I feel that age should, as we think about it, is usually depth measured in a linear fashion, where people talk about your years on just a linear scale. But there isn't enough thought given to the actual depth, and it should be given in maybe in square years as opposed to just linear years. And what depth of life do people have within the time that they do actually have here?
Wonderful. Love that.
So in terms of my experiences growing up, and a lot of people need something maybe dramatic to change their direction or to change their way of thinking. I was knocked down by a double-decker bus, and when I say at the start of this call or any other time that I'm happy to be here, I truly am happy to be here. A few inches further back, and I may well not be talking to you now.
Wow.
So that certainly changed my perspective on things. Not to get into it too much or build it up into too big a story. I hear lots of people talking about these life-changing moments. Yes, my life flashed in front of me in that moment, and I'm happy to have survived it and got on. It did leave me with a number of issues for many years, and even still today, I could have some back problems as a result. But it also took me on an interesting trail, and I probably a lot of my travels around the world are because I decided also then that I should make the most of what I did have.
Yes.
But it introduced me to various healers, medics. I lived in Japan for 10 years, so I saw a few different people there that were involved in the world of healing, or the medical world, and treating people, as well as others from Australia, America. Used to see the oldest practicing chiropractor in the world was based in the west of Ireland, and I remember going to see him a few times, and
Wow.
was quite interested in his approach, which was very different to most other people's. A man that was almost totally blind, yet had an amazing energy, persona, and ability to understand a person very quickly just by spending a little bit of time with them.
That's fantastic. And it reminds me of the time that myself and my wife, we took a train from the Arctic to the equator. So we started in Norway and took a train to Singapore. Not one single train, but over the space of 4 months, we journeyed by train. And on that journey, we ended up in Van Vieng in Laos. And there was a massage place there, and it was called Seeing Hands.
Right.
And it was only blind people who worked in it. And their sixth sense and their ability to find the root of whatever was going on within your body and sort of massage that out of you was actually such a wonderful experience for both of us as we got it. My wife really took a lot from that particular experience of having that massage. Whatever. That guy really got into something and took it out of her. Mine was really good, but it wasn't. She still talks about that one to this day. So I believe that if you lose one of your senses, or one of your senses is depleting, then it's usually replaced with another. And of course you're around top level sportsmen. If you look at from a footballer's perspective, they might lose their speed as they get older, but their wisdom and their sort of intuition is significantly enhanced.
Yes, but that may not be for all, but for those better players, yes. Now, it's very interesting that you mentioned that, and the point of the blind healers doing the massage for you. In Japan, many times that the massage would be done by people who were visually impaired or legally or fully blind. But what that does, and what you said about losing a sense, it reduces the noise.
Yes, good point.
And with some of the biofeedback work that I introduce people to and do with people and do myself is about clearing space and reducing noise and allowing more room for other elements, other things to come in.
I'm recording this podcast through Anchor. And if you're considering doing a podcast and you haven't heard about Anchor, then let me tell you, it's the easiest way to do a podcast. So let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many other platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. Definitely check it out. Download the app now from the store.
So I've done a course in mindfulness. I do meditation regularly myself and continue to study that. And there are many different forms of it. But last December in California, I got to visit and spend some time with Tim Galway, who is the author of The Inner Game of Tennis, The Inner Game of Golf, and a series of books related to that, and a lovely formula that he would use or explain to people, that outcome is equal to potential minus interference.
Outcome is equal to potential minus interference?
Correct.
Wow.
So that's the interference being the noise that you spoke about, or that I mentioned there, but that being the sight that would be with our sight. And it's something that's so relevant in today's age of phones and computers. We are taking in huge amounts of information all the time. And yes, our ability may improve with processing it, but if you flick down or flick through, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, or whatever else, even without consciously being aware of what you have seen, your eyes have picked up a huge amount of information, and that goes in, and that then creates noise or interference within the system.
Yeah. Well, I believe in a lot of ways that's what separates me from a lot of the people that I'm around, is the fact it's a simple thing that I do, is that I don't have any apps on my phone in relation to communication. So as you well know, I don't have WhatsApp or anything like that. If I have a specific call to make, I can download the app and I can use it for the call and send a few messages at the same time. I also don't have Instagram. I will download it and use it if I'm on a trip or in various things. But the reason why I don't have any apps is because I don't want to make it easy for myself to overload my mind and my subconscious with information which doesn't matter, which in the longer run. And it basically comes down to that as well. And it's always, my success in whatever I've done it's always come down to turning down the noise, like having as little distraction as possible.
Exactly. Well, that's what we have to do in as much as is possible. And that's what the more successful people do, is set things up to our advantage. That yes, we maybe want to build up our resilience and our power to resist something, but at the same time, if we overload on the temptation to have, as you're saying, those apps there easily available, that once you open your phone, they're there and they're screaming at you almost. By reducing that, you reduce the noise, you give more opportunity for other things to happen. It fits in well with, Bruce Lee used to talk about it in the Buddhist philosophy of beginner's mind, or emptying the cup. If the cup is full, there's no room for anything new or no new information to enter.
Yeah, beautiful. And is that one of the things that you would definitely say that separates the elite business and sports people and others, is the fact that they're just a lot more efficient at turning down the noise, and therefore they're more likely to fill the potential, as you would sort of go by that calculation?
It's a combination maybe of ability to focus and the willingness to say no to things that are not relevant. So they have filters set up. So it may not be exactly that they don't have the apps on their phone or other things, that it'll be different for different people, but they will have a filter, and everything will go through that filter or those filters as to what is important for them.
Yeah. I came to an understanding just when I was pondering about 3 or 4 months ago that one of the great motivators in life is shame. And the reason why I think so is because it's such a rotten, horrible state of being. When people talk about shaming this or shaming that, it's such a big term to put on someone, because to shame someone is to really put them on the lowest of the low when it comes to vibrational frequency. And I think a lot of the successful people that I have met have at one stage of their life or not had a level of shame, and it might have came from poverty or how they look, or something that was sort of a seed, as you say, was planted in them, and it made them feel lesser, and as a result of that they were ashamed of that thing. And what they have done is they have used the poverty or whatever that was to overcome that shame, and they used it, basically they sort of went against it, and they thought, I'm going to do this so I never have to feel like that ever again, and I'm going to fix at least this one problem in my life. And I know just by meditating a couple of months ago, it was one of the things that actually came to me, was the shame of growing up around poverty. And we had a sort of different type of poverty in Northern Ireland, but there was still a level of shame in it still for a young boy in it. And I think, although it was horrible at the time, I think I can be really grateful for that now, because if it wasn't for that sort of depth of that feeling at that time, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Well, my experience would be somewhat similar, but a slight difference in terms of where it could be shame. Invariably, there will be pain. It may not have been shame, but there will be pain, and that pain then is used as fire to fuel the movement from that. And
that's where I was at that stage up until a few months ago. I always thought that was the pain, but and then I realized, what was the pain? Was it? And actually, my answer was, it was shame. And shame is, if you look at the emotional frequency, the range of like love is at the top. I think
I'm aware of that. Shame is way down there. It's not a good, it's not a powerful. You're better off being angry. Angry would be ahead of it. Anger and other emotions, which may not seem very good in inverted commas emotions, but would certainly, shame is well down there. Yes.
Yeah, I think anger gets a bad rap, actually. We live in a world where everything is so passive now that when someone's angry, it sort of seems they're sort of shamed for that. Actually, if I was to use that thing.
Right.
And I believe anger is a great motivator. I mean, you don't have to go around and trash the place or take it out on an individual, but I think there's a lot of fuel that can come with anger.
Correct. It's quite powerful. And what I would say to people and people I'm working on, so I would put a lot of attention on emotions, and quite a few golfers would say, or would often have said, well, I've got to get angry to play well.
Oh, wow.
And that's something that made me think and look into that aspect and the whole area of anger more so. The conclusion that I came to from my observations of the people I was with and saw and study into it was that anger was the spark that moved them to determination. They didn't have any success at anger, but they did have a determination.
Yes.
Could they have got to the determination without the anger? Maybe they could, but it wouldn't have happened as fast. It was a quick move to action. But in a state of anger, you will lose access to certain parts of your brain. Potentially, you won't be able to think as logically. And also from a sporting perspective, your fine motor skills are going to be greatly reduced. You may have increased physical power, but your fine motor skills will be reduced. And that is more relevant in some sports more than others.
Yeah, of course. Because I was surprised when you said that even a golfer wouldn't have the self-awareness to think that it was his anger that got him to the success. Because I would imagine it was his ability to breathe, concentrate, focus, all the things which are the opposite of anger almost,
Well, they will associate. So also emotions and strong emotions have a very strong correlation with our memory. When we are in an emotional state and something happens, we're more likely to remember it, or if it's an event that triggers an emotion, then even more so. So if we go to some big event in history or in your history, the ones that you will remember most will be the ones that had high levels of emotion, good, bad, or indifferent, attached to it.
Yeah, of course. And that's what they say about... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's important to be aware of what's happening and what emotions. But as I say, it's not the shame. You won't have had any success in shame, but it may have helped you move from there to something else. And I think shame is something that's probably more prevalent in Ireland than in many other countries. And won't get into some of the reasons just in terms of upbringing. It could be something to do with religious teachings or teachings by certain people growing up that, you should be ashamed of yourself for doing this, that, or the other.
Yeah, but I wonder, is it because that? So I live in Sweden, as you know, and I look at how Swedish people deal with alcohol compared to how Irish people deal with alcohol, and I think it may be the same with a lot of things. I think Irish people are just quite more open about it. And when they're doing it, they're going, well, this is how it is, and this is the situation that has left me. Because I find that in Sweden they probably drink a lot more, but it's hidden. And
right,
I was saying this for 5 years. No one in Sweden has ever told me that they were hungover until about 2 months ago, and I was like, wow, because they drink quite heavily, and it's quite difficult to get alcohol here, so they stock up on it.
Okay.
But in Ireland, you could walk into Starbucks and they open the conversation. This young girl could go, I'm completely hungover because I was out last night. And it's completely acceptable. Whereas here, it's completely unacceptable.
Almost a badge of honor at times here.
Exactly. That's it.
Well, yes, in terms of growing up here in Ireland, it's an accepted part of our culture that drink and having the crack, as we call it, out with friends and kind of a few drinks in the pub and socializing is all part of our life. So it's taken as being quite normal. And I was thinking just earlier when you said about not having too many sunny days in Ireland, I think as a result of our weather, maybe we get more inside the pub time as well, or used to. And that was our way of socializing and just having a bit of fun. But
yeah,
quite acceptable, as not without its problems in certain families and with many people, but at the same time, we grow up thinking that it's a normal part of life, and it's nothing.
Yeah.
We don't have too much shame attached to that in general.
No, and actually, I think for good and bad, I think nobody should be sort of suffering from shame based on anything. But at the same time, I think we could be a bit too promoting of that. It's been a couple of years since I went off alcohol a couple of years ago. And the more I'm off it, the more ridiculous it looks from the outside. It seems like such an outdated concept to me. And the reason I went off it was because I actually realized that I never really liked it anyway. And I was usually just drinking because everyone else was drinking.
Right.
And I've always been drinking for free because, and when I thought about that, I realized that people were I was never initiating alcohol. And people were then always giving me alcohol. And whether it was at parties or work or whatever, people were... And I found that exceptionally the case when I was backpacking because everyone wanted to have a few drinks with the Irish lad to get the party started and whatever else. And I realized that I was having 2-day hangovers for like 5 or 6 hours of laugh. And I enjoy the crack, don't get me wrong. As you say, I used to enjoy being out for a few beers, but I only enjoyed the first couple. And I did not enjoy the hangovers. I couldn't justify having a 2-day hangover for the sake of a couple of hours of laugh. And I didn't actually need the alcohol to have the fun. It was just other people did, and they wanted me to come along on the journey with them.
Well, it's interesting, and I would be somewhat similar in terms of, but rather than giving up drink or alcohol, I gave up hangovers.
Yeah.
So I just decided that I didn't want that wasted time, whether it be a 1 or a 2-day hangover. It just wasn't worth it because that next day there was still stuff that I would like to do or enjoy, even if it wasn't any big event. I still wanted to have the morning.
Yeah. So what do you do now then?
I will have an odd drink, but I don't need any more than 1 or 2, and that's probably fine in most occasions. And I enjoy those, so I will drink maybe a little bit more mindfully as well, that I will enjoy. And like you said, it tends to be, for me, I have asked a couple of other people and they say, well, they enjoy the 5th or 6th one more than the first 1 or 2. But for me, it's more about the first one, and maybe about the company then. If it's wine with friends and I can drink maybe a reasonable number of glasses, but it'll be spread over time and in company and maybe with food, as opposed to just grabbing pints of beer and throwing them back in a bar.
Yeah, of course. And you were saying something earlier about emotion, and it's the time that goes so fast as well when you're having fun, and therefore I've always believed that time is just a measure of emotion, because sometimes you could jump on a flight from Dublin to New York and you sit down beside a stranger and you start chatting to them and the conversation's great and it feels like 5 minutes have passed, and then you land. And so you were in a positive state and your emotions were positive, so time went fast. Alternatively, whenever you're sitting in a doctor's waiting room and you're looking at the clock and you've been there for 3 minutes and it feels like life will just never end. And again, it's the measure of the emotion. One is a really positive experience, even though 10 hours feels like 5 minutes, and the other is 5 minutes feels like 10 hours because it's not a positive experience.
Well, I think even more so than emotion is related to it, is that if you get into a conversation which is engaging, you'll get into what's known as a flow state with that. And time then gets distorted in flow states. For sports people, they'll talk about it. Sometimes time can appear to go slow and quick at the same time, or just one or the other. As in, even though the sport is happening at full speed, they can experience it almost as if they have time to react. Okay, I'm going to put my hand up now, whereas actually that's only taken a fraction of a second, and they're going to imagine how they're going to catch the ball, and then they do catch the ball, and that appears to be happening slow to them. Yet the whole experience then of maybe the game, or like you're saying about sitting on the plane and maybe flying to New York, and suddenly the whole thing is gone because you were so engaged and present in that process. Whereas in the doctor's room that you're describing there, the mind is maybe jumping towards, well, I want to go in now, or is there something wrong with me? What's the doctor going to say? And so many other thoughts, which are not, it's not allowing you to be as present or in the moment. A few weeks ago, I was at the dentist and I had 2 biofeedback devices on me at the time. And it was quite interesting then to look back. So I was getting some work done on a cavity which was under a crown. So there's quite a bit of drilling work to be done. But I was conscious of getting myself into a relaxed state and focusing on what I would term heartfelt emotions. So emotions of gratitude and care and love, and bringing a nice feeling with that. So I was very present, certainly awake. I did have an injection locally in the area, but there was a lot of work going on. But when I look back later that day at the data from 2 different devices, so one device showed it almost the equivalent to having sleep at night, that I was in that restful a state while being drilled in the dentist chair. And it looked almost as if it almost looked like 35, 40 minutes of sleep time, that the recovery in that period was so good. And the other device, I also checked and looked at what the heart rate was at, and my heart rate probably didn't go above 52 or 3 for the time that I was actually seated in the chair. Obviously, it moved up and down as I got into the chair and out of the chair, but apart from that, it was very stable and low.
Yeah, of course. And do you find that, I know you have a few different measuring devices and some very impressive ones as well. What do you take out of those holistically? Because sometimes we can get so caught up on the minutiae of the detail and the statistics that we get. How do you manipulate or change your life based on the feedback loop that you get?
Well, the feedback is just that. It is only feedback. So we shouldn't get too caught up in it. At the same time, I want to be able to look, see for myself, and show others, because some people like to have the proof in front of them that certain interventions or doing certain things can cause certain reactions, because a lot of people are not very aware of their emotional state. You ask an Irish or an English person typically how they are, and you'll get probably one of 3 different answers. I'm fine or good or bad, and doesn't range too much more. So people's understanding of their own emotions and their emotional state is very poor. So it allows to get a little bit deeper than that and explore if I do things and then explain things to people.
So you've spent a lot of time in Japan, and so I never realized that we were so like A, B, or C when it comes to how we are. What would you say the Japanese equivalent would be? How would they respond to that?
In terms of looking at the data and that?
No. If you were to say, how are you feeling? Or,
how are you feeling? Well,
yeah.
First off, in the Asian languages, they have a lot more words for emotions. So that in itself gives you some indication that their whole thinking and understanding of their language has more different ways of expressing how they could be in that moment.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I forget the number. I think there's something like, I don't know if it's 40,000 different emotions that have been identified and logged. Don't ask me to name them. I do have an app on my phone that has, I think, 2,000 different emotions.
Wow.
And it's interesting to look at and explore and go into that. And it's like a universe of emotions and a world of emotions that you go in, and other emotions then are maybe close to others. And in studying this, I became a certified HeartMath coach in 2015. And through that, I've learned and continue to learn and look at the area of emotions a lot more.
Yeah, fascinating. I must check that out, actually. It's been, I think it's been about 10 years since we first met. Whenever I was during my travels, I came back to Dublin and gave a presentation. And even from the first meeting, even though I was in front of the crowd talking, you even then came across as a guy who wanted to know more and do more and give more. I mean, you're a real giver, and you want to absorb as much information that you can to build a holistic package of information and a toolbox of sort of things that you can use to make yourself better as a human being, but also to make others better, whether it's in sport or business or just in personal. And you really do shine in that way, Jude. You really come across as an exceptional human being, and it's an absolute honor to know you and have access to you and talk with you from time to time.
I appreciate your kind words coming from you, especially. It means a lot. So thank you. Yes, I remember that first meeting. I think I remember which hotel and the room and the setting, but I liked your story, and it was good to be able to get a few minutes with you after that, and then to exchange details and follow up over the years since then, and meet both here and in Sweden last year as well.
Yeah.
But there is so much to be learned, and I think it's one mistake that early on when I started doing some coaching, somebody asked me, "Oh, well, are you a guru of?" And I said, "No. In fact, actually, I prefer to be a non-guru, because I don't want to be identified with just one thing, because invariably there are so many different elements that go into something.
Yeah,
nothing stands alone, and that's." We've got to see that there's so many different ingredients, and by changing one, then maybe lots of things can change. Some ingredients will certainly be stronger, and there'll be more of those at a time, or as you said, in terms of in 6 or 12 months' time, your thinking may be different. So if we were to repeat this conversation, you may hear it different and take different things out of it.
Completely agree. And also, it's the word. The very word guru is a word that you have to be so careful with, because in the past, to put yourself up as a guru could get you killed. Because for you to say that you're the person who knows the answer, and then you prove it in front of the sort of mob that you don't know the answer, the punishment was death. And I think that the term is used too freely now. And it's why I really appreciate Tony Robbins. He really goes into the human being that's in front of him and tries to help him with his toolbox. And whenever he did that Netflix documentary a few years ago, he says, "I'm not your guru." Right. And I really appreciated that approach, because he's a guy who has a lot of wisdom like yourself. And I know you're a busy guy, and I know that you've got another meeting coming up. So if people want to reach out in relation to some performance coaching, I'm going to get some information put into the link of this, so they can link to you on whatever social medias and whatever websites you want them to connect with you. But is there anything any advice you'd like to get people to sort of do to reach out and find you?
Well, my website needs updating, but judeoreilly.com is my website. It's a few years out of date, but is on the schedule for being totally updated. Twitter, Jude O'Reilly. Also, I'm lucky in the name that I was given, Jude O'Reilly, that there aren't too many others, although I do know of one other in Dublin, and somebody else from New York with the same name has contacted me before. But I have got at least the domain name judeoreilly.com, and Jude O'Reilly on Twitter will get to me. So that's JUDEOREILLY.
Yeah, I'll put all the details in the link as well, and everyone they can reach out to Jude there if they're looking for performance coaching or just to see what he can do to sort of get you to the next level. But Mr. O'Reilly, it's always an absolute pleasure.
Enjoyed chatting again, Patrick, as always, as you say, and look forward to getting together, whether it be Stockholm, Dublin, or elsewhere for
elsewhere. Let's and I hope it's soon. But thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing your insights and wisdom, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Good to connect.
Thanks, brother.